Welcome to Open Your Reality, everyone. I'm Chad. I know it's been a while since I put out a video, but here I go again. And in this video, I want to talk about anti-gravity and how it's done. I've been meaning to make this video for a while, so now it's finally here. And this is really kind of like a continuation of a video I made in late April called Why Time is Actually Three-Dimensional. And in this video, I'm going to reveal the secrets of anti-gravity. Now, I'm going to get to how it's done soon, but first I need to give you some brief background on the mechanism behind it. And in that video from April, I demonstrated that time and space are both three-dimensional, with each one having their own separate reality. So when we move through space here, we are moving through time in the parallel reality. And when we move through space in the parallel reality, we are moving through time in this one. Both realities, our own and the parallel one, are connected and work on a reciprocal level. So as I said in that April video, Dr. Dewey Larson was one of the first scientists to discover this, which was back in the 1950s. But even today, his theory is still considered controversial. So the reason that I'm partial to Larson's theory is because it gives us a better explanation of the universe than Einstein did, or really any other theories that came after him. So now you understand that our reality is a place with three spatial dimensions. And there is a parallel reality similar to our own, except it's an inverse reality where time has three dimensions. Now I know this is a difficult concept to wrap your mind around. So the best way to explain this would be just watching the Tesseract scene from the hit movie Interstellar. Now if you've never seen the movie before, I highly recommend it. You can always watch the Tesseract scene on YouTube after you watch my video, of course. But anyway, in the Tesseract scene, Cooper, the hero of the movie, is trying to communicate with his daughter through a Tesseract. The reality that Cooper experiences in the Tesseract is not the normal reality where we reside, but the parallel reality where Dr. Larson discovered. And when Cooper was physically moving through the Tesseract, he was actually moving through time in normal reality, where his daughter Murph and every human being is. By doing so, he was able to travel through time to communicate with her. Alright, so what does all that have to do with anti-gravity? Well, now that you know a bit about Dewey Larson's reciprocal system, we can get to the good stuff. So here's the basis of it. To create an anti-gravity effect, we need to impart energy to an object by way of moving it, colliding it, or changing its frequency through sound. Now let's talk about colliding first. When objects slam against each other in our reality, like a car crash, they lose mass and weight for a short duration. That duration is usually around 15 to 20 minutes long. I know you're thinking that sounds impossible, but wait for it because I have a clear explanation. And I should add, there is scientific and empirical proof of anti-gravity in nature, and you can even conduct similar experiments if you had a delicate enough scale. The best examples we have of empirical proof come after tornadoes. You've probably seen how tornadoes lift cars, cattle, and even houses. Most people believe it's just air suction. Sometimes that's true, but not always the case. Evidence of this natural occurrence of anti-gravity can be seen when a heavy object like a car is uprooted, carried a far distance, and put down without damage. Furthermore, I've seen pictures of many matter-blending effects from tornadoes, such as wooden planks being melded into structures like bridges and even other wooden posts. And if air suction is really the cause of these objects being lifted into the air, how could a piece of wood meld into iron in a perfectly preserved state? Well, I'll get to that shortly, but the science behind anti-gravity is the key to explaining this. Incidentally, this is the same science that the US government used when it conducted the Philadelphia experiment back in 1943. So the government was attempting to make a Navy ship invisible and teleport it. Some of you probably know about this. During the experiment, they bumped a large portion of the atoms together that make up the ship to the reality where time has three dimensions. And the entire ship and even the crew on board were affected by the experiment. And this means around half the atoms of the ship and the men were in the other reality, time-space. To us, watching from the outside, the ship and its crew would look hazy, even glowing, and fading in and out of our reality. Now, during the 20 minutes or so of the experiment, the ship and the crew became sort of like a plasma in our reality, neither completely solid nor completely fluid. And this effect occurs on such solid structures as metal, flesh, and bones. And once the atoms settle back into our reality, they can be mixed together in unlikely combinations. Perhaps an overly simple example of this is when Neo touches the mirror in the first Matrix movie, and it's a fluid-like jelly. Or maybe you remember Terminator 2 when you just walk through the jail bars. It's something like that. Now, unfortunately, in the Philadelphia experiment, once the ship and the atoms of the men returned to a normal state, there were some horrifying consequences. Men were literally melded into the hull of the ship and other parts of it. Some men even perished. Now, according to reports, the Navy quickly shelved the Philadelphia experiment and forced all involved to sign an oath of secrecy. The government then assigned the papers a level beyond top secret, never to be declassified. Gee, I wonder why. This was in the very early days of using this technology, but it didn't take too long for the government to perfect this technology and carried out many other experiments that were not in the public eye. The thing is, when the government gets its hands on new technology like anti-gravity, it never minds testing it out on people who can be hurt. Because to the elite, all people are expendable. Just ask JFK. So one of the forerunners of anti-gravity technology was a man by the name of Dr. Nikolai Kozyrev. It seems to me that many of the most groundbreaking science came out of Russia. I mean, there were dozens of brilliant Russian scientists who slaved away in desolate laboratories, some in Siberia, and made unbelievable breakthroughs. And perhaps due to communism and just being in Russia, they never received the acclaim they deserved. And almost as bad, their work was largely unknown. Anyway, getting back to Kozyrev, he found, as I told you before, that simply by smashing objects against a hard surface, it would cause their weight to decrease. Now, he conducted simple experiments where he would drop a piece of lead to a stone basement floor, and then Kozyrev would then weigh the lead before and after it dropped. And he immediately discovered that after dropping the lead, it weighed measurably less. What's also strange is...
Cześć! Dzisiaj w naszej kuchni goszczę kobietę, która udowadnia, że można gotować prosto, szybko, no i pięknie. Paula Bonowicz-Golec z kanału Szamto. Witam.
Is that its weight did not fully return to normal for 15 to 20 minutes. Instead, the weight came back in increments as the atoms slowly quieted back down, below faster than light speeds. And this suggests we are dealing with a fluid-like flow between the two parallel realities. Dr. Larson called these two parallel realities space-time, which is ours, and time-space, which is the existing parallel reality we never see. And again, I talked all about this in that video that I made in late April. And in another experiment, Kozyrev merely shook a weight up and down 30 times by hand to cause its weight to decrease. So it seems that whether being smashed or shaken, as long as the atoms accelerate within the object, they achieve a small anti-gravity effect. But how? Let me go more in depth on the mechanism of this. You see, when the atoms in an object are given energy by smashing, dropping, or shaking, some of the atoms begin moving faster than light speeds. And guys, by the way, I'm talking a little bit slower here just so you grasp this information. I know it's a difficult concept. So when that occurs, they pop out of our space-time reality and into time-space reality. And this occurrence literally means some of the atoms in that object are no longer in our reality for a short period of time. And like I said, it's usually 15 to 20 minutes. And this also creates the effect of levity in the atoms that surround those that have jumped over the boundary between the two realities. However, when the high-energy atoms begin to lose their energy, they return back to our space-time. And this explains why these acted-upon objects initially lose weight and then gain it back in increments over a 15 to 20 minute period. It's because an object with less atoms will naturally weigh less. Remember, those atoms are not eradicated. They simply exist in a parallel reality called time-space. And once they lose their high energy state, they return to our reality, but in increments and not all at once. Can you do this experiment yourself? Yes, and it should absolutely work. Now, don't think you can just drop a large stone on the ground and it will lose like ounces. It doesn't work like that. The weight lost is much less discernible than that. Still, the weight lost from a large stone is measurable if you have a scale that can detect it. And this, my friends, is the foundation of anti-gravity. And now that you know this, we can talk about how to achieve anti-gravity on a large scale, which will be in the next video. So in that video, I'm going to get into Tibetan acoustic levitation, which is how the Tibetans were able to raise tremendously heavy stones hundreds of feet in the air, how an obscure Russian scientist created a small anti-gravity craft using the design of insect wings, and how anti-gravity is now powering all the government and alien craft we think of as UFOs. So I hope you found this video interesting. As always, like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you all in the next video. Much peace, love, and light. See you soon.
Po czym moc polskiej armii poprowadź siły NATO w realistycznej grze online War Thunder. Pokonaj przeciwników na ziemi przy pomocy